It's interesting what you uh, don't notice for a while being gone.
Yeah.
Like I noticed certain species. Like there's no worms here, so
Mm.
I'm doing some gardening, and I've been gardening for the last like 6 to 8 months here where I'm at, and there's absolutely no worms, and I'm like, what is that? Like
Yeah.
um, that's unusual and problematic. I'm sure if
Yeah.
there's zero worms in the ground, but and then there's other animals that are very low on the scale of abundance. There's bees, but very few. You might see an occasional butterfly, but just very few. There's no, the sow bugs.
Sure.
The
Mhm.
very few of those. Used to be those everywhere. Like when I was a kid, they'd just be out when it would rain or whatever. You'd see those, and now they're gone. So I don't know.
The impossible conversation. In a post-truth world, we need a safe place to have conversations about things that really matter. In the business as usual world, we just can't talk about the insanity that's now called normal. And we don't talk about our core disconnection from the web of life. The impossible conversation, where we can come together to fully feel what we're going through and discern the sober reality of the world around us. The impossible conversation, where we can set our sights on fully reconnecting with our deeper, wiser selves, others, and Earth. The impossible conversation, where thought and activist leaders can explore new ways of being in the face of our global predicaments. The impossible conversation. Welcome to this safe circle.
It's interesting what you uh, don't notice for a while being gone.
Yeah.
Like I noticed certain species. Like there's no worms here, so
Mm.
I'm doing some gardening, and I've been gardening for the last like 6 to 8 months here where I'm at, and there's absolutely no worms, and I'm like, what is that? Like
Yeah.
um, that's unusual and problematic. I'm sure if
Yeah.
there's zero worms in the ground, but and then there's other animals that are very low on the scale of abundance. There's bees, but very few. You might see an occasional butterfly, but just very few. There's no, the sow bugs.
Sure.
The
Mhm.
very few of those. Used to be those everywhere. Like when I was a kid, they'd just be out when it would rain or whatever. You'd see those, and now they're gone. So I don't know.
All right. Well, I'm just couldn't be happier than being able to talk with Kevin Sandbloom today. We actually haven't had the chance to meet yet. This is our first time where we're getting to meet, and I've been following you for a while. When you started out with what I guess was the website or the name of your music that you do, it sounds like that's your day job.
Yeah. Well,
And then you've shifted recently to Black Bear News. And are there any other updates about where people can find you?
that's basically it. I mean, if you go to YouTube and just type in Black Bear News, you can find me there.
Yeah.
I have a blog that I've been doing. Well, I set it up a few years ago under the Black Bear name, and there's just a few posts there about environmental collapse and about things that people can be doing in the face of the news. But that's basically Black Bear News. I'm trying to transfer everything over there.
Yeah.
I started with the Red Llama name, or the Red Llama music page, because I was hoping to kind of integrate like people who were interested in the environment with people who followed me because of my music. And I found out, eventually that doesn't really, it's not really it's not really happening. I think people are interested in me because of my music. They don't care about the environment stuff. So it's, I'm finding more and more that I have to separate the environment stuff from my public life, because people don't understand it. And I'm trying to find a way to bridge the two. I would love to find some kind of sweet spot in delivery or in messaging, so that it's very difficult though, because you can't, there's a certain amount of what would you call it, like a kid glove kind of, kid glove kind of way of communicating to people about climate change that is very not, it's not telling people what the truth is about what's going on. And, so there's got to be a way to tell people what is happening, the severity of what's going on, and without, driving them into panic or making them shut down. And it's, it's a difficult thing. I'm not sure. Haven't figured that out yet, but when I do, I'll let you know.
Well, let me just take a moment to recap, so that if somebody's new to me or to Living Resilience or any of the work that I'm doing, or they're new to you, they get a sense of who we both are and what we're doing this talk for. So I'm Dean Walker, and I've been working for about 3 years now with a woman named Carolyn Baker, who is probably the most prolific writer in terms of writing books about the imminent collapse of human and Earth systems, and particularly answering the kind of umbrella question: who will we be together in the face of a predicament-laden world? All the problems and challenges, and then even predicaments that we're facing. And she's an extraordinary author and quite an amazing ally that I've gotten the chance now to create with. We've just finished up an online summit which brought in thought leaders, people who have something to say about how to stay present, how to stay sane, how to keep your heart open in the face of what is, in my opinion, the most daunting and large-scale example of cultural and species level violence that human beings have ever had to encounter. And so, like you're saying, like you just got through saying, this is the third rail of all third rail conversations, and so people's limit is oftentimes just a few seconds of conversation about any of the topics that you cover. So again, you're Kevin Sandbloom and doing Black Bear News on a YouTube channel. So, both you, Kevin, and I are part of a small band of people around the world who are choosing to face what's going on in our world really full frontal. In other words, we're really looking for what's really going on, and that which is not well reported or reported at all, if not full-blown distorted by mainstream media and government sources. So, it takes a certain amount of courage, and it takes a certain amount of inner metal to just even take on doing this, to take on putting the word out. And have I frozen again?
Right. No, I got you. Yeah, absolutely. It's, you definitely, if you start talking about this, people start responding to you as if you are, you're out there like, okay, and it's interesting. Like every time I post something on Facebook about climate change or around the subject of climate change, I invariably get somebody kind of coming on, kind of like they'll jump on my post and say something distracting, or like as if what I'm talking about doesn't matter, or it's not a big deal, or they'll challenge me on something else, and and I'm like, it's really hard. Most of the time people get what I'm saying, but it's also very, it's a huge issue, and people just shut down over it, and so when I find when I'm trying to talk to other people in my life about it, that, some people get it, some people are receptive on some level, but it's hard to convey the severity of the problem, without going to, without getting to the point of like, what, like kind of, what are we going to do? With panic level, trying to get some kind of response from people like, okay, this is serious. So what is it that we need, what are the steps that we need to take in order to get to a solution? And again, like I just, in the last couple of videos that I've posted, I've been talking about accepting that there is a problem, and that's, you're in a room full of alcoholics, and they're practicing alcoholics, and you're trying to say, it would be really good if you stopped drinking, and they're like, no, I got it, I got this. We're, I'm, everything's fine, So, and that basically sums up, 90% of the population of the world is that we're alcoholics, and we're drunk on industrial civilization, and we're drunk on cheap oil and all the lovely things that it brings us, and how do you convince people that there's a problem when they don't see a problem? And it's very difficult. And the fact that they're not alcoholics, they're functioning members of society, right? They're doing things that everybody is telling them, that's the thing that you should be doing. Good for you, like good, you took, 35 plane trips this year, bravo, you must be doing something right. I just met a woman last night who travels from Mumbai to New York to Los Angeles to Boston to Chicago, like multiple times a month for business, like, all right, on one level, I'm like, you're doing very well for yourself. Good for you. But on another level, I'm like, oh my God, like this is what people are aspiring to do in life. Anyways, the conundrum, the predicament that people are in.
I know it very well. One thing I wanted to talk with you about, because I've really appreciated the past few postings that you've done. There was one in particular. It was the one that you titled about the mass die-off of sea creatures following the UK freeze, and it wasn't so much about that, even though that was an anomaly from Jesus, like jaw-dropping anomaly. But that was a particularly potent episode, and there was yet another one a little sooner, in which you mentioned gaslighting.
Yes.
And so there's just a few words that I'd like to throw out there and pursue with you, because I think we both know, or if people are new to the conversation that are just listening to us right now, they can get a sense that what we often talk about in our various blogs here is what I call the sober data. Literally just straight out of the news or straight out of scientific reports, that this is what's going on. And we also have already covered the ground of collectively, we have a ridiculously short attention span and capacity for that sober data without for one reason or another, we literally shut down our perception and our participation in a conversation. We literally just shut it down. And so
Right.
another word I'd like to bring in is normalize. What staggers me past, well, really for decades now, because I come from a background of doing a lot of personal development training with people, and I've had the privilege of working with people in remarkable, intimate and potent situations about their relationships or their organizations or like that.
Yes.
So it's been a good run. But even back 20, 30 years ago, it was clear we were normalizing an extraordinary level of destruction of our own habitat and other species. And, never has it been more true than right now. And in fact, my experience is just in the past few months, just literally since the turn of the year, the level of every metric I can think of is in full bore acceleration mode. And especially, obviously, the whole Arctic thing is off the charts.
Right.
So I just wanted to plant that word with you about what we've normalized, and perhaps we can loop back to it. I don't know if you have any instances of that yourself or anything you want to say about that. I guess bottom line, what I'm trying to say for myself is, it is blowing my mind what we are normalizing, what we call normal, politically, environmentally.
Right.
I just keep asking myself, how big a red flag does one need before one takes something seriously? So I'll just, let me leave it there and see if that sparks you to anything.
I don't know. Well, so somebody in my comment section was saying that a few years ago, when there was a tsunami in Southeast Asia, there was like a tsunami and an earthquake, and like 300,000 people died in a few events during the early 2000s or through the 2000s, and people just were like, just kept going on as if it was a blip, like no big deal. And so somebody else in the comments said, well, you need to have like 300 million people die for people to go, oh, this is a problem, like, I don't know how big of a thing you need to see happening. What I think when you're talking about normalizing, it's also a product of the gaslighting, is that we minimize or downplay things that are very serious while we're trying to, you're trying to make everybody believe that this over here is a very serious issue, while not even, we're not even covering the fact that Boston in the last few months had huge storm surges, and amazing amounts of damage just from a couple of storms, so that's another city that is definitely, I think, on a list of cities to go away from very soon, in the next few years, but you have Houston obviously being destroyed. You have people are leaving Puerto Rico because their infrastructure is still damaged. And people, it's just not a place where, it's just not a very fun place to be right now. So, I think we're going to start normalizing these disasters, for as long as we can, right? We're going to, we don't mention that this is going to get worse. We don't mention this is an ongoing problem. Like, you don't have people on the news going, hey, look at all this stuff that's happening. Could it be part of a bigger picture? Like, nobody's putting that together, and possibly instructing people on what to do in the future. And that's, I think another huge problem is the messaging around climate change, is that there's no messaging, that there's no, we're not telling people the truth about what's going on. So therefore they cannot go forward in life. Like, we're providing a service, I think, to, you know, to the greater population, that this is what's going on, and we, you know, here's possibly what you can do to go forward in life to mitigate climate change, or live your life in a way that probably, hopefully, you won't be impacted by climate change as much. But it all starts with the acceptance of the problem, and it starts with, you know, communicating the problem to other people. I think I just painted a big old, you know, a big old stroke there on a lot of things. But I mean, we're normalizing what we do to the earth by just getting in our cars and going to work every day. We're normalizing it by, you know, managing our lives in a way that, you know, is what everybody, you know, doing what everyone else does, and kind of living in this paradigm. You know, if you're living in this paradigm and you're functioning and operating individual, and you're messaging people all the, you know, you're kind of operating in a system where you're telling everyone else this is okay. You know, it's a fundamental, like, bit of programming that we're all part of. And you know, I don't know how to break, you know, the one way to break that, I think, system is to, you know, to break your habits of communicating that this is okay, that everything is okay, you know, and you have to find a way to do that, you know, without disrupting everything all the time, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a tough thing, you know, because I see it every day. You know, I log on to Facebook and I'm just like, you know, people are talking about things, and I can't, it's depressing, because I'm like, guys, you know, everyone's worried about things that are just so unimportant at the moment, given the state of the planet, you know.
Yeah.
And my impulse to post climate change news all day long and go, you know, Oscars don't matter, the championship game doesn't matter, the Super Bowl doesn't matter, like, this should be important to you, you know. I have to fight that impulse every day, because I know that it's just going to be annoying, right? You know, people are going to be like, please be quiet while we talk about Game of Thrones. You know, like,
yeah. Yeah. So I absolutely hear you. And it's a very familiar track that you're describing. I'm very familiar with that track. And
yeah.
what I would say is, again, working with Carolyn Baker, I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Rupert. Does that name ring a bell for you? And so he was kind of an earlier voice in the same kind of track, you know, really speaking truth to power in a number of different ways and about a number of different issues. And this was one of them. And and one thing that Carolyn and I really, why we started working together and why we're creating what we're creating, is we saw ourselves in that same role, and it was like beating our head against a wall. There was just not much satisfaction there. What there was putting out this vitally important information, and it just kind of falls flat at best, you know. Maybe there's a small handful that resonate. Yay, that's great. And so what's at the center of what we're doing is we call our thing living resilience. And the idea is, if not business as usual and that kind of reaction, that kind of normalized reaction, then what? And where we're headed is toward what if it was possible to not just survive or endure these wave after wave of global scale stressors, but what if it was possible to actually thrive, learn and grow and thrive in the middle of those stressors? it's a pretty wild assertion, you know. I don't know if
Mhm.
you're tracking with me, but it's like
Yeah.
it's a hell of an idea. And it comes from a guy named Bob Doppelt, who wrote a book called Transformational Resilience. And I've been tracking with him and this organization that he's got conferences and stuff, you know, and
Yes.
he gets some pretty amazing people at his conferences. You know, the first one was in DC, and we had people there from the Rand Corporation and from Homeland Security. It's like,
Okay.
this is some wild shit,
Yeah.
you know, and he's just as forthright as you and I are about the sober data. So what's
Yeah.
one thing that's at the center of this, at least in the way that Carol and I are doing it, is the first thing we need to do is to be able to find what is our baseline. Most of us don't have a baseline. We get up, we go through our day, we go to our job, we take the kids to soccer. We're busy as fuck.
Right.
Don't bother me with that. I do want to watch Game of
Right.
Thrones, and don't bother me. That's the one chance I get to
Right.
chill out for my day.
Right.
And
Right.
that's as close to a baseline as we got, is we're just doing our regular daily life.
Yep.
And that regular daily life has no capacity whatsoever for this scale. This is the greatest demand on human integrity and heart and resilience that has ever happened. And
Yep.
and people already are stressed out the ass
Yes.
handling daily life.
Yes.
So the word that we're using is to come up with a resilience baseline, to be able to articulate for ourselves what's the like current status of my inner capacities and skills, so that I could look and be of service to my family or my loved ones if there were wave after wave of things getting worse. And so I'm noticing that's a way in that I've used a lot with people, because I don't know, I wrote a book and I put it out last year called The Impossible Conversation. And it's all about what you and I are talking about.
Yeah.
And the impossible conversation is exactly this, that basically the business as usual culture is indeed what's killing us and a planet. Yeah. And the impossibility of it is that anybody is willing to talk about or consider the notion of slowing down or stopping any portion of the business as usual world.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So a way into those impossible conversations for me has been to just ask people, so what are your concerns in the world? And just really have an authentic curiosity. So what level does concern you? So if it's not about, you know, about climate change and so on. And I got to say, you know, I've had some extraordinary conversations with people that are so unlike me, it blows my mind. You know, some conservative fundamentalist Christians, some folks who are absolutely staunch deniers, and so on. So I guess I'm here to say that there's a little toe in the door. There's a little possibility here and there. I don't know if that right. changes the name of the book at all, but it's still as much impossible as ever. So thanks for listening to all that. I just wanted to give you a sense of the orientation that Carolyn and I put together, because we were finding ourselves with the same kind of frustration that you just got through describing as you try to address these issues with friends and associates, and they basically shine you on.
Yeah. What I would love to read the book. I haven't read the book, so I'm going to do that because it's, I mean, that's because that is a key, you know, that's a key part of my life is I spend a lot of time mentally trying to figure out how to talk to people, and you know, and I do it through my videos, but I literally every time I shut off the camera, I'm like, I really didn't say the things I wanted to say or say it in the way that I wanted to say it. You know, I find myself kicking myself a lot. because it's angering and it's frustrating the problem, and it's frustrating the resistance. The resistance to the problem is frustrating, and I'm lucky to have the viewers that I have and the conversations going on my channel that I do have. I find that it's very high level stuff. There's not a lot of trolling and bickering going on. It's really, people are very conscious and aware of the problem, the depth of the problem, and the difficulty in communicating the problem. But yeah, I mean, how do you, I mean, even breaking the habit of business as usual, breaking the, doing it yourself, taking personal action in stopping the kind of just, knee-jerk acceptance of this is how it is, and where, I gotta just, like you said, everybody is stressed out, everybody is busy as hell, and I see people everywhere really just, that's right on the money. I mean, everybody is stressed out, everybody's really tired, everybody is kind of just in really deep in this, trying to keep everything together. And that's by design, I think. There was, that the idea of a living wage and leisure time is not what those in power want people to have. Absolutely do not want people to have.
Yep.
One person in a household being able to make enough money for an entire family to live comfortably and have leisure time. They don't want that, because people will be spending time talking about stuff like this. People will be spending time protesting. That's kind of what led to the Vietnam, all the protests around Vietnam, was that you had a wealthy middle class America with children, with leisure time and time to, going to college and thinking about important things, and going, no, we don't want to, we don't want to live this way. And, so the fact that nobody has enough money and nobody has enough time and nobody has enough sleep is, very important to keeping everybody in place, and running on that hamster wheel,
Yeah.
Kevin,
Kevin,
but I don't,
Kevin, I just wondered if I could interrupt for just a second and go back a couple of minutes ago. You mentioned something that really caught my ear. Excuse me.
yeah.
You said something about how your viewers tend to be pretty high level, that you don't have a whole lot of trolling, you don't have a lot of bickering. And I just wanted to stop there and acknowledge that. And really acknowledge you and acknowledge your viewers, that's not something to just kind of take for granted. I think that's a really great statement about what you're doing. And it's a great statement about the folks who are taking the time and intention to watch what you put out.
Yeah.
It's just as much a part of the business as usual paradigm that we all grew up in, to be trolls, to be polarized. We've gotten, it's been a progression of more and more separation and more polarized since Fox News came into being back in the 80s.
Right.
It's just been ramping up. And so it's really makes total sense that we have the ridiculous polarization and vitriol that we have everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to just pause for a second and go back and really acknowledge you and your viewers, and to really invite us all to maybe take that little acknowledgement and that little piece and put it in our pocket as one of those skills that I say is going to be is vitally important as we anticipate bigger and bigger multiple waves of stressors coming, because it fits right with an assertion that I got going on, said this is the time to find our people, because
Right.
we're not going to be able to do this alone. This
Right.
rugged individualist that's going to muscle through it. I don't care how many guns you got or cans of beans you got or whatever the hell. This is not going
Right.
to work alone. And so we've got to find the little nuggets of gold that allow us to bond, allow us to connect, allow us to be safe with one another, so that we could possibly, just possibly, chip away at our own normalization, our own numbness. You know, we've got these regular calls that we do called safe circle calls, which, you know, I'll put the information up on the screen for people who want to, you know, come to them. They're free and they're every other Tuesday. And they're just a safe place for people to share, you know, like, damn, I'm frustrated by this, or I'm joyous about that, or, you know, I'm
Yes.
challenged by this. And there are just no safe places to have this kind of conversation. And I think what you've just described is you've got a little nugget of safety in how you do what you do, and in what the qualities that your viewers bring.
Absolutely. And I'm really trying to I'm trying to be kind of in the middle of, you know, I don't want to be a place where I don't want to attract, you know, or put off, you know, a type of person, or, you know, ideology or whatever, you know. I find that you're right. People are very polarized. So I'm trying to break those lines somewhat. You know, I want to be a place where it's not, you know, where there's conservative people on my channel, and there's, you know, liberal people on my channel, and there's, you know, climate change, even people that don't believe in the science of, you know, greenhouse gases causing warming. There's plenty of guys that are like pole shift guys, you know, that are on my channel. Maybe not plenty, but there's a few. And if they stay respectful, I'm totally down to have them in the conversation. Like, because, you know, and that's basically it, is like, if we can have a conversation and not have it be, you know, trolls jump on my page and try to, you idiot, you don't know what, you know, conspiracy, climate change is made up, and, you know, didn't Trump say whatever, you know. And I try to, instead of, you know, I try to stop the reaction, you know, the first stages of reaction, which are to, you know, shout back, you know, and then get to the fourth or fifth reaction, which is, you know, I hear what you're saying, you know, I don't agree, and you're totally welcome to stay here and, you know, listen to the information. You don't have to, you know, you're not going to find a lot of buyers for what you're selling, you know, but if you comment, but you're totally welcome to stay and, you know, have a conversation with people. And I think we have to do that in all, you know, all areas of life. I think, you know, there's a lot of, the internet is a very good place for people to vent their frustrations. And I see it all the time. I see it on all platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you know, people just venting their frustrations with whatever is going on. And that's totally understandable. And sometimes it's appropriate, you know, but there's, you know, there's a point at which outrage shuts down, you know, wisdom or contemplation or conversation, you know. And so, like that, you know, I get the outrage. I get that. I have a lot of outrage, you know, and that's the thing that bothers me, is when I do my videos and I find myself getting angry and I'm, you know, mad. Then I'm like, okay, was that helpful? You know, was that tirade really necessary, or did that bring in people, or did that push away people? I don't know. But I'm, you know, I'm trying to be a place where people can have conversations and have some, you know, bring some wisdom to the table, and be inclusive at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's obvious that that's what you're trying to do, and I think you're doing a great job of it. I'm curious. Our time is kind of winded down here, and I'd if you don't mind me asking a more personal question, I've been keeping track for a while now of what crosses my screen, what I hear about, what I experience that really moves me. And it's really important that I not let myself get back into that flow of normalizing and being numb. So I make a point of cracking my own heart open really as often as I can. And it's very intentionally done, and it's a practice and so on. And you know, every once in a while, just something comes through that really moves me, really like reminds me I'm part of a living system that is dying. That it really, yeah, cracks my heart open. A
Yeah.
couple of examples of that, you know, I'm an ocean guy, and how are we doing with the signal? Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. It was just freezing a little bit, your picture, but you're back.
Okay. So some of the recent sober data about the oceans has just been devastating for me. And another one that entirely unrelated was that German study that came out last year that after 24 years, 27 years of study, uh, close to 80% of the winged insects that were being studied were gone.
Right.
You know, that's basically a step away from complete extinction of winged insects.
Right.
Like, oh my God. You know, it just literally stops me, and my heart drops and my breathing shifts, and really it's an opportunity to grieve. And again, that's part of my practice and what really helps me stay sane. You know, it isn't something that I dwell on, and that's the only place I live. In fact, it's a place I go kind of surgically to let myself feel it. And I'm curious, is there anything that hits you from time to time or hits you recently that has moved you?
Almost, you know, I want to say that it used to be daily, but I mean, quite often, I'm, obviously the data is what's going on in the Arctic is um, very, very concerning. And there's somebody sent me a graph of where we are at sea ice. You know, the extent that we are at is I don't know how many deviations, from even the last couple of years. We are very low in sea ice right now, in March in the Arctic. So, and that data seems to be coming at us every single day. And when when you think about what what it means to have a blue ocean event in the Arctic,
Mhm.
if that is actually coming to us this year, it is going to it's going to shift things phenomenally, around the planet. It's going to bring, some very dire circumstances our way, so I, you know, uh, uh, I guess I'd have to be honest in saying I'm actually kind of I'm kind of skating on top of numbness right now. Like I'm trying to just function, because there's a lot going on in my life, and so I'm just um, I find that being busy and just doing the things that I need to do is kind of keeping my mind away from where we really are, because if I allow myself to really get into it, and really sit with the enormity of what's happening, it's very depressing. It's extremely depressing news. And I also try and convey that I think a lot of my viewers are going through that too. And it's hard to deal, it's hard to be the focal point for that, for others, their depression too. Right. So like there's I log into, my YouTube page to see the comments, and I get a lot of messages of people, dealing with it, having a hard time dealing with it. And, this is what your work is here for, what Carolyn's work is here for. I think what everybody who is part of this community, and people who are trying to get the word out, and people who are doing what they can to help others, form a community and be whatever shoulder or space for them to, to experience what they're experiencing. I think that's incredibly important. If that's the least we can do, that's is walk people through what's happening, then that's incredibly important.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I sure do appreciate your time, and I hope I was not too intrusive by asking that last question. I sure appreciate your response and your realness with that. Thanks very much for that. And yeah, that is what Carolyn and I are, putting our best efforts into doing, is creating a safe environment where people can build those skills and find ways to have alternatives to just either being depressed or being in denial. That's kind of a bad binary to be stuck in. And so, we're just to mention it, for if you post and then I'll post, we're in livingresilience.net. And we're just going to be putting out, we've got those safe circle calls that I mentioned on Tuesday nights, and we're starting up a practices group to be able to have a way to share practices to get ourselves reconnected with our deeper selves and with each other, and hopefully with the earth. And at the risk of being repetitive, I really acknowledge your viewers and the small cluster of folks that you and I are part of around the world, to just keep standing up in the face of the tsunami that's hitting us. Kevin, I really appreciate your work. Black Bear News. Keep up the good work, and I wish you the best with what you're facing in your own personal life, and then continuing to provide this service. Is there anything you'd like to say to kind of wrap it up and let people know what's real for you and where you stand?
Well, I don't know what to say other than that. We need to be as honest as we can be with ourselves, and with as we can be, as operative words, as honest as we can be with others, without obviously putting them in possibly psychological peril. But I think it's important to confront this news and confront the situation with everything that we have at our disposal internally, because it is a grand it's kind of a grand quest, to deal with this. It's very challenging, and it's going to take the very best in people to deal with this. And so, go forward with bravery, in the next couple of years. I hope that, I hope that we can just get some kind of massive awakening going, among even the population of the United States. If we, one community and one society can possibly kind of, spark something that awakens. Yeah, I think it's happening all over the world. I think people are waking up to this. I think people are realizing that it's a serious problem, and so it's going to be up to individuals. It's going to be up to you and I, citizens, just kind of taking the reins and dealing with this the best we can. We cannot wait for somebody to come help us or save us or tell us the truth. We have to do it ourselves. So,
yeah.
That
old saying, we are the leaders we've been waiting for.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Kevin Sandbloom, thank you so much it's good to meet you, for the work
Yes.
that you do. And I hope we get a lot of other chances to talk like this, and then hopefully meet together in person someday.
Yes, Dean, thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
All right.
And I'll post this on my channel as soon as I can do it.
Great. Me too.
All right.
For listening to another episode of the Impossible Conversation podcast, produced by Dean Walker and Living Resilience. Music provided today by Port Blue, Into the Sea. To be considered as a guest on the Impossible Conversation podcast, or to set up coaching, speaking arrangements, workshops, online resilience education, and resilience bridge trainings, contact us at livingresilience.earth or impossibleconversation.net, safecircle@gmail.com, or find us on Twitter @safecircle.